Good afternoon, Brollies. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for our third webinar session in our course series. We put together this webinar series to equip all of us with practical know-how and do-how to strengthen ourselves in times where a lot of things deplete our physical, emotional, and mental energy. For those of you who haven't done so yet, please let other Brollies know who haven't joined us at these sessions that these are taking place, as we want this information to reach as many people as possible. Also remember that these sessions are being recorded and available from us if you want to look at them at any time. So just contact us at brolcares@brol.com or reach out to us at Group Human Capital. We are more than happy to assist you. Last week, we had Liana and Maria who spoke to us about very practical tips to make our budget survive the pandemic. And in the first week, we had Eric Vermeulen who gave us 6 tips to shift our minds from resilience to endurance. Now we're building on those tips today. And to do so, we've invited Ingrid Dubuisson Nasai, who will be talking to us today about building your well-being and your well-doing superpower, which sounds really exciting. Ingrid is an organizational psychologist specializing in applied neuroscience in the work context, and the author of the book, Fight, Flight, or Flourish: How Neuroscience Can Unlock Human Potential. Ingrid, we are so happy to have you here, and I love how you've introduced resilience in the invitation and the session that you shared with us. Resilience is not something that just exists. We choose it, we develop it, we practice it. So thank you for joining us today. And we look forward to hearing from you on how to do this from knowing how the brain physically works. Over to you, Ingrid.
Thank you so much, Andile. And everybody, can you see my screen? Are we sharing? I'm sharing my screen, it's correct? Yeah? Okay. There we go. Sorry, apologies about that. So a warm welcome to building your well-being and well-doing superpower. So I first want to just clear the air. I'm definitely not a motivational speaker. I like to call myself one of my core strengths, which I'll talk to you about later, the humble label of a teacher. But I love my topic, so I'm sure you'll get some good data mining out of this session. So first of all, what we sent out to you today is this very long payoff line, building your well-being and well-doing superpower. And what Andile so rightly put is that, you know what, there's this big word called neuroplasticity, and that means that our brains are malleable. It can change depending, as you've heard before, where we place the attention. So there are many things where we can put the attention. Today, my focus is going to be on well-being and well-doing. And the heads up that we gave you in the advert to the talk is reflect, reframe, reboot, and refocus. But I really am going to be talking about being present and being on purpose today. So this is one of, I think, the world's biggest role models, an anchor of living on purpose and being present. And one of my most used and hugest, let's fix that statement, sayings by Nelson Mandela is, we must use time wisely and forever realize that the time is always ripe to do right. And why I started with that is that I think typically so many of us, you know what, in the corporate world, we forget to take care of ourselves. So we can't pour from an empty cup. And yes, that statement does mean the time is ripe to do right for others, but the time is also ripe to do right for yourself. So I want you to type into the chat box one word that describes your state of mind at the moment. You know, as Africans, I think we are still surfing the COVID wave. or even some of us not surfing it. So if we can just check in that we're on the same wavelength, type into the chat box anything that describes your state of mind at the moment. And that is called, in well-being language, it's called emotional regulation, or just plain straightforward, name it to tame it. People that can name the emotions immediately has got a grip on sailing a tumultuous work life or whatever stresses come their way. And we often forget that. There's that famous movie called Inside Out, if you haven't seen it, that talks about labeling emotions. And that's one of your superpowers. But I'm going to, as I said, go to two superpowers, and that is be present and be on purpose. But there's a lot of F's that we can use at the moment to describe where we're at. So we know from resilience work and integrative work between the neurosciences and psychology that the right F's to focus on when we're in times of trouble or just to flourish in life is that we must face the facts, we must find our focus, and then we must flex to flourishing. So I'm going to just quickly, literally skim through all of them, the surface, and then give you one exercise about reflection, also being present, and then one on purpose. But facing the facts at the moment for us means that we've shifted from a low-tech, high-tech, high-touch economy to a low-tech, low-touch economy. And what does that mean? It means that all of a sudden, life, the future ain't what it used to be. So one way that we know a superpower is that when we face the facts, facing reality as it is versus how we want it to be, minimizes fear in the brain. But our context at the moment is not what it used to be. So high-tech, high-touch, now we're in high-tech, low-touch. And what does that mean? So in psychological language, a lot of us feel, okay, our work-life balance is gone. We don't know if we're coming or going, but we really now know that what that means is that our basic needs that we have as humans, and those are so easy to remember, it's the acronym ARC. We've got a need to be in control of things. We've got a need to have relationships, and we've got a need to be competent and have esteem, to be somebody and give somebody something in this world. But what's going on at the moment is that we vacillate. I mean, I actually wonder some days, am I disorientated or am I now actually flicking over into being disordered? So what's going on with us at the moment is we've got what we call increasingly this COVID-19 potential adjustment disorder. None of us are disordered at work, at home, mostly. We are just feeling slightly disorientated. But be assured that it's not a fallacy. It's not like we're dabbling in isolation and in depression. It's real, people. But so what do we need to learn from neurosciences and what we call organizational neuroscience? For us, that's in the working world. So it's very important to understand what we call this inverted U-curve of performance. And that says we flick over into dysfunction where we go into a little bit either feeling fatigued, exhausted, ill health, or really burnout if certain things aren't met. And that red picture there on the right-hand side talks about what happens into our immune system. We flick over into dysfunction, our immune system goes down, and the probability that we'll get ill is much higher. And the secret is, it's not just all, think positively and toxic positivity and what you think about will come about. Unfortunately, life is much more complicated than that. But what we do know that the brain and the body is highly interrelated and highly correlated. So that means you can't just think yourself out of a bad situation. You have to find your focus. So finding your focus starts through the body. There's this wonderful saying, a Buddhist saying actually, but it's got universal appeal now that neuroscience has proven, silencing and stilling the mind. And it says, you can't wash off blood with more blood. You can't fix your bad thinking with more thinking. talking positively to yourself and telling yourself that thoughts and feelings aren't real, they're just imagination of the mind. You know what? You have to wash off, you can't wash off blood with more blood. You have to work through the breath and the body. So I want to take you to this slide. It's called the Attention Diamond. I love it because it's almost this thing, you know what, evolution or the grand organized design has given us chemistry and brain processes and neural networks that we need. If it wasn't needed, it wouldn't have survived. And why this is so lovely, it immediately gives you kind of the bands of where your brain and your mind functions. And you can tweak that based on what you do. So yes, well, I lie, we are not a chemical cocktail consisting of neurotransmitters and brain waves, but that is almost a marker of where our minds and our bodies are at. And if you look at the moment, most of us are dabbling. I've made it light pink. It actually should be Ferrari red, I think we call it, that square at the bottom. And most of us at the moment are in that state. And I want to put the attention on state. And the research shows us, and we don't have time for that today, is that the higher we go up in the organization, the more the propensity is for us to sit there. So that means we've got a narrow external focus. In a narrow external focus, it means we are narrowly focusing on the outside world, on potential stressors and attackers and anybody that is in our way, that we perceived is in our way. So stress is literally, in this language, just the inability to adapt to changing circumstances. And what we do then, in the stressful situation, we fixate on remembering the past, called rumination, or one of my favorite words, catastrophizing. The men ruminate and the women catastrophize by virtue of genetics. And how do we do that? How do we get out of that? So the solution is that we need to learn how to stress right. And what we say there is go with the colors of the rainbow. I mean, they are there for a reason. And different tasks and different things that we do in our lives, different habits, well-doing and well-being habits, have different neural markers, and we now know how to unlock those. Okay, if Andile said she'll help me with the questions, but let's leave it till the end. I'm worried that I'm going to run out of everything I want to tell you, and I will get back to you via Human Capital and your Broly network to handle questions.
In terms of people's state of mind, there are people are feeling anxious, some people are feeling blessed, but worried, uneasy, frustrated, chaotic, clouded, worried, uncertain, emotional, fragmented, motivated, overwhelmed, confused, focused, content. So those are some of the keywords that have popped up.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. And you know what is so lovely about that is you can just almost say, you know what, if we see nothing is ever missing in our lives. If you look at you as a corporate role, what you've just put up there is, if you look at that, you have covered all the colors of the rainbow, people. Because today, one of us feels that we feel spiritual with a turn of a screw or a funny look from a boss or a colleague. We feel that we are in survival mode. But why I asked you to check in with that, naming it to taming it, it's a beautiful word called emotional granularity. The more granular we can become with our words, specifically our emotions, the better the brain has the opportunity to finally calibrate what's going on. And it's such a wonderful insight, because I think we fall into a trap that we've got this language that we've learned, and you know what, I feel fine, or I feel, you know what, we all have our saying, our like backstop, if somebody asks you how you're doing. But we now know the more granular you can become, the more you can describe exactly how you're feeling. Not just the blue side, the positive side, but also the red side. People that can granularize their emotions or name it to tame it, they've got less disorientation, less disorders, so mental health issues. So, and the wonderful thing is, those of you that said, I feel disorientated, or, you know, so I've got the blues, or, I mean, you know, I have the blues often, but if you can give yourself the permission to use that, name it to tame it, it's very good for your brain health, for your team around you, for your family, and for everybody in your social circle. So to build on that, now that we've named it, to tamed it, and we realize that we actually fluctuate all over that attention diamond. And I think the insight here that I forgot to say is that where's the silver lining, where's the golden thread that you've also learned, I think, from the first week, powerfully from Eric, is this broadband, that middle broadband. And it always reminds me of that, one of these meditation people that sit and they're really chubby and solid. I mean, it's a big, broad belly that you sit where you've got a huge amount of oxygen coming in and a huge amount of anti-oxygen and negative chemistry going out. And the secret is this word of being present. And I'm going to unpack pack it a little bit about how do we do it at work. So this diagram here, it comes from a very famous study, a groundbreaking study that tells us, you know what, you've got two modes in your brain that it's really operating all the time. And I don't know who of you've ever read, it's a world famous book about Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. And he said, just think of it, you know, how often you are, as you sit there on your chair, like I do here. Or as it may seem, I am my remembering self, and the person who does my living is like a stranger to me. And that talks about how we project into the future, we escape into we overplan our lives, or we regress into the past. We have guilt and shame of the past. So this guy said, you kind of people, the beauty, and we all know it, is in the present tense. Be present now. And the issue is, how do we do it? So it's really a very thin slice at mindfulness and at mindful awareness. It's not even mindfulness. It's in the formal word for it is mindful, business word for it is mindful attention awareness. And the mainstream, we call it meditation, but today we call it being present. You'll get these slides, so I would really encourage you to read up on it and even to go and look up Thinking Fast and Slow. But what I want you to do now is to sit on your chair with your back straight. I want to give you an exercise where we say, what is it that so close your eyes, sit on your chair, if you're on your chair with your back straight. It's going to take 3 minutes. I want you to close your eyes and not look at me, or put your camera off if you can for now, if you're worried. Put your camera and your sound off if you can, and just look at this picture. And this is the saying that says sunshine in and darkness out. And it's an anchoring exercise to being present. So Norman Farb said there's two ways of experiencing the world. The narrative mode, the story mode, that narrative that talks to us all the time. I should have, or you should, or I could, or I will, or he will, or everything that is time and space bound, but not in the present. And the way to tap into the present is to, we love this thing called, it's a sticky language. So you don't have long sayings. You just say to yourself, sunshine in and darkness out. You breathe in through your nose and out through your nose if you can. I mean, I don't have time to show you breathing techniques. I know you've done breathing techniques. But we say if you're really under stress and before you go on a call, you always breathe through your two divine straws. Nose breathing is where the beauty lies. So as you sit on your chair, open your arms, your palms flat on your thighs. You rest your tongue beneath your bottom teeth. And all that I want you to do for 1 minute, it's a neuroscience-based reflection exercise. You take in sensory data, you don't process it. Because what goes wrong with us in our brain, why we flick over into stress and why we can't do well-being and then well-doing to ourselves and others, is that we are not present and we're taking in the data And then we run a story with it, either into the future or into the past. So I'm going to stop now, and for 1 minute I want you to take in sensory data. And then we've got 7 minutes left, and then it's questions. So sensory data means the following. Breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. And then you feel the texture of your clothes on your body. You feel the oxygen maybe coming in and out through your nose. You feel the temperature of the room around you. You close your eyes. You actually feel the heaviness of your closed eyelids. And what you are busy doing, you are busy being present through taking in sensory data and not processing it. The part of the brain that calms us relies on our senses. So now you're going to sit for a minute, and then I'm going to debrief the exercise. No talking, just taking in sensory data, not running a story. And if your mind wanders with your story, you just go back and you breathe in and out through your 2 divine straws. I'm timing you right now. Sunshine in and darkness out. The place is here and the time is now. And you'll feel the drool reflex, your parasympathetic nervous system taking control. When you have a slight drool reflex, you've got to swallow some spit, or you've got a tear in your eye. And it's just your brain calming down, saying, I'm here, I'm present, I'm in that broad band of taking in sensory data and seeing reality as it is. Not how I want it to be, or not how I don't want it to be. And then let's take 1 breath in through the nose and out through the nose. Okay. You can open your eyes. So what we've just done here, people, is what we said, the switch between the narrative mode, the story mode, to the experiential mode. And the experiential mode is where that brain bubble is empty, and that's where our superpower lies. Our mental bandwidth lies there. That doesn't mean you have to go to an ashram or to do serious mental exercises. We now know that 8 minutes a day equates to changing the shape and the size of the brain over 8 weeks. So I would love to spend more time on that. The last one is, so now I gave you a snapshot into being present, be present. The last F to well-doing and well-being is to flex. And flexing means I stretch myself through daily practices, and the neuroscience word for that is plasticity or circadian rhythm. It's another thing, the brain wants a rhythm and it wants to know what happens when. I won't have time to go through all of this, but it's a 7 strategies that changes the shape and size of your brain if you repeatedly do it. We are what we repeatedly do. So this there's a write-up on it. I'm going to skim through it quickly. The ones that I think is really powerful today is I've given you a touch, a flavor of what does it mean to stress right, and that word rhythm. Sleep, stress and mood is highly interrelated. The brain wants rhythm. As soon as it's got a pattern, it eases down its defensive mechanisms and it goes into the flow state. It flourishes upwards. But you can also build order into your circadian rhythm by you taking control as soon as you get up in the morning. That means you make your bed, that your brain knows this is order and control. Unplugged time, we say specifically in the world of work, teams need to have scheduled, agreed unplugged time. Nobody is online between that time. And then how does stressing right, why is it powerful? It increases brain-derived neurotropic factor, which we don't have time to discuss today. The second one, quickly, go to bed in a state of grace. That means counting your blessings. Those that count their blessings before they sleep have got good serotonin trickling through their brain before they sleep. They've got good consolidating of memories, and they have they wake up inspired because their brain had time to cherry pick what's important, and that's that narrow blue band at the end of the diamond. Stillness of mind, I literally gave you a 1 minute on it. You did it in the first week, I believe. And then the difference between, I want you to get this thing of screen apnea. Be aware that when you go and sit in front, like all of us, in front of our screens the whole day, if we are not conscious, if we are not present, we stop literally breathing. It's the same breathing pattern syndrome as when we have sleep apnea. So you need to biohack your breathing. Before you go online, you say sunshine in, darkness out. You breathe in and out through your nose, and you have a reset to that broad band and that attention diamond. States of mood, it's what I've literally given you, the narrative focus. The more we are in the story mode, they say a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. And why does that mean? It doesn't mean I'm daydreaming, but typically if our mind wanders, it takes us to the negative, unless we're conscious that we are just relaxing. So making sure that you are taking much more time to be in that direct experience versus negative story mode mind wandering. Self-regulating, I gave you right at the beginning. I said take purposeful pauses and then name it to tame it. So putting your feelings into words reduces your hypervigilance. Your brain is in the flow, in the broad band of receptive to seeing the good. And then social first is phenomenal, but we don't have time for that today. It really says that we are mirrors of each other. We literally, it's a mirror neuron system. We, by nature of our political structures and influence structures at work, we copy the boss for better or worse. It's called emotional contagion or emotional convergence, and that's the whole field of work of inclusion. Spot it, you got it. If you can see it in someone else, you also have it, and that unlocks your key to feeling that you belong. Deep body of work and lots of work to be done in Africa and South Africa to that we all can feel included. And then self-transcendence is the last one. It's a big word. It comes from Maslow's hierarchy, and it takes me to this thing called refocus on purpose. People that are present and they are on purpose, they flourish. That's what the research shows us. So what does purpose mean? It's not some nebulous, mushy thing that you get from somewhere. Your life shows you what your purpose is. So we say lean into your strengths, people. We are not perfect at everything, but we've got lots of learned behaviors. Like me, I'm terrible at admin, but I've learned to kind of reconcile my books. But I've got a natural strength. So it's a difference between our strengths, our natural strengths, and our learned behaviors. And then perfectionism. I mean, we all have this fantasy that we must be perfect instead of just making progress. 55% of management cites the statement, I should get everything right. So you can just imagine the kind of stressor that builds on all of us. And we are all managers in some parts of our life. It's a strong limiting belief. So I wanted you to lean into your strengths because that's your superpower and your life shows you what your strength is. So in the chat, if there's time and if you're brave enough, this is an exercise called Reflect. It's a personal reflection. So a short pencil is more powerful than a long memory. The brain slows down. You need to think what you write down. So wherever you are right here, right now, I want you to answer those 3 questions. Because people and it's what we say, it's easy peasy and it should be fun. And if we polish that a little bit more, we come up with a purpose statement and a life calling that you know is you. But I want you to write that down, and if you're brave, you can even post it into the chat. We'll make sure that the Broly team takes that further with you if you want. But it's a lovely conversation to have in your team. So number 4 is, I didn't write it in there, but what we typically tend to talk about is what we suck at. I suck at the following. So this is kind of flipping the classroom in your brain. We want you to say, what is it that fills your tank? What does it fill your tank? It fills my tank to hang out with people that I love and to socialize. I'm here, Ingra, not to be an auditor or an accountant. I'm here to teach neuroscience in the corporate world. I love it. I live for it. That's my thing. And I make a difference by making, I believe, the complicated simple in terms of my work. It's one of my core values. So I want you to write that down. And the more you work with it, and the more you can come up with a punchy, sticky payoff line, the more the brain sees it as a superpower. It's called the anchor. This is my purpose. This is what I'm good at. Not this is what I suck at. You must also do that, but do less of that. It's called the positivity ratio. The more we can spot the positive, our strengths, and be aware of our learnings, what we suck at, the quicker our brain builds new pathways and it spirals upwards. So my call to action for you today, mine is choose flourish. You're happy to, I encourage you, and Andile, if you can see if anybody types in there, what is one word that captures your experience of today's session and the action that you are taking. So that's kind of putting you on the spot there. I mean, I'm not saying you've got to now type your action if you haven't thought about it. It was like literally 30 minutes flat on organizational neuroscience and flourishing at work. But mine is always that I choose flourish. So it will be nice to check out, captures your experience of today. What are you doing when you're doing that? When we post these things into the chat box, we're naming it to taming it. We're putting our mind back in driving the nervous system. And that is called granularity. So questions, there's the flourishing, the body of work that I offer to you. Offering also more insights if you want to via Brolly Network, and any questions. Andile, over to you.
Yeah, thanks Ingra. Thanks for that, and thanks for the insightful presentation. Some questions that have come up is, how does one differentiate between well-being and well-doing? And if you could maybe elaborate for us on how you differentiate between the two as briefly as possible.
Okay. So what I've inferred a lot of that, but if we can go back to the slide of, I'll take you there, then you know. So well-being, really what we're saying is starting inside out. If we look at number 1 to 4, 1 to 5, that we want to argue in terms of how the brain works is well-being. That is me as a person. I'm well, I'm flourishing, I've ticked off all the boxes that makes my body and my body-brain system well. The well-doing is a word that I've invented, but typically because it reaches outwards. And the well-doing, what we say is that our brains, that's why that last one there says self-transcendence, is that we are wired to make for pro-social behavior. And pro-social behavior is when I am nice to others, so that's the doing part, taking it beyond the self. And the well-doing happens when I have a purpose bigger than myself. People that serve others, that their strengths are languaged in how they help others, they don't even need to get money, they're so motivated. It's called oxytocin gets released in the ventral striatum, which is the reward center of the brain. People that have a pro-social purpose. I'm here to help somebody. And so you need to understand then well-doing has got to do with understand that we're social first and casting it into or curating it into a purpose. And then do what we say, my divine purpose and my acts of service. That is well-doing. But I don't have time for all of that. But well-being is making sure that you are physically and mentally well by doing those markers. The brain markers are there. And 6 and 7 is taking it out to the world. And once we find there's a bi-directional relationship between that. People that aren't well battle to self-transcend.
Wonderful. Thanks for that, Ingra. And the second question is, which of these superpowers do you find that people find most difficult to adopt? And how does one overcome those difficulties?
So it's that. Thank you. Wonderful. So all the answers are basically on this slide. So let's start with the bottom up. Oh, number 1. The brain wants order, and it's called, well, I've just put there circadian because we all know it's a big word, but it just means day-night rhythms. The quicker you can live with, I mean, I don't know who of you've read the 5 a.m. Club book, but I mean, the quicker we can tune in our lifestyles with day and night, the quicker we have the ability to spiral upwards. The most difficult one to learn, to grow new pathways, plasticity, the plasticity is tough, it's not easy plastic, is old habits. So, and where does that, and I want to, so the most difficult thing is to silence the mind, if you think of it. And I mean, I can go to a wonderful discussion on it. And why is it old habits is so hard to change? Because it's our ego. And sitting in a breathing exercise, now breathing in sunshine in and darkness out that I've told you, the brain is not used to that. And sitting still and then saying to the brain, you know what, don't ask any questions, don't breathe in and out through your nose. It's a very difficult habit to change because the ego wants to achieve, it wants to do and take charge. So the most difficult thing is, but it's easy. I mean, don't just, you can plod away. There's so many apps today, and you know, sitting on your chair, that's where we say, start here, right now. Plasticity of silencing the mind, because when the mind is silenced, the rest follows. And I mean, it's almost the cornerstone of adaptive leadership, is what we always say, is mindfulness. Because if you can silence your mind, in other words, you've put your brain's braking system on to not say that funny thing in the meeting, or to not fall into that negative self-talk about what you suck at all the time, it's say, oh, okay, well, there's more options. And breath, why is breath so important? Because it unlocks the stored emotional baggage that sits in our memories.
Last question, Ingrid, I'd like to squeeze us in. This one is from Linda Jones. Are there any mind games that one can practice or wordplay that one can use on a day-to-day that's available either on our phones that we can buy on an iStore, or that we can just buy from our phones effectively?
Yes. Yeah, there are lots of apps. I mean, if you want mind games, I mean, that's a different thing. That talks to abstraction, the brain's ability to stay nimble and mentally alert. And I'll send the ones that I have on to you, the names. I'm quite a revolutionary when it comes to that. I don't strongly encourage apps. I think we over-teched and hyper-vigilant with technical stimulation. There's a wonderful app, which is not what you're asking, Linda. It's not a mind game, but it's a calming app. So the neuroscience research shows us that people that can incorporate the brain body, so go and sit under a tree like Newton did when the apple fell on his head and he discovered gravity. That's the way to go, people. Unscreen yourself, unzoom yourself. That's the way to build it. Hey?
We get off our phones and go
yes, yes. But they are. I've got a whole book full of apps. I'm going to send them on to Shadai to your network, to probably Human Capital.
We'll send them on to the team, and we've got some just final comments that on that last slide. I'll read them out to you, Ingra. That last slide that you shared.
Okay.
So I'll just go through them, no particular order. The responses were, I don't know if you'll put the slide up so that there's some context in terms of what.
Okay.
This one was saying inspiring. So type in one word what your experience of today's session was. Inspiring. He's going to be more deliberate in his thinking and be more focused. Another response is consciousness in the moment. James is going to choose to live in the now, which is lovely. Miriam Flint, uplifting and trying to be present. Guli said feeling is now motivated, change from earlier on. And very informative is also one of the comments that we've received. So generally positive responses all around. I think those are some of the comments that have been shared so far.
Thank you. So, Andile, over to you then. I want to leave you with that saying, sunshine in and darkness out. It's not easy. Breathe in and out through your nose. It's not going to take you to conquer your life's problems. But one thing I can vouch for is that the pathway to well-being and well-doing is to choose flourish. And that's a deliberate decision, people, with lots of layering of practice. So thank you for this wonderful opportunity. And I love the vibe that I've sensed here in the whole offering that you've had today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Inga, and a big thank you from all of us just for availing your time and all of the knowledge. It's a lot to take in, but we greatly appreciate it. And just a reminder to all of our brollies that are with us in the session, that the next session will be same time, same place. And until next time, remember to breathe sunshine in, darkness out. That's what I'm taking from today's section. Goodbye, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much.